All right, how you doing, guys? This is Mike McCormick from Advanced Criminology here in Owings Mills, and I tell you, this has been a very hectic past 2 days. It's Monday and Tuesday, the 5th and the 6th of February 2018. This trial in Baltimore, where detectives Hersl and Taylor are on trial as part of the last two or remaining two officers in the gun squad case here in Baltimore City, have been on trial actually for the past 3 weeks. A lot of you may have not known that, but the trial's been going on for 3 weeks. And so I tried to get out this office to attend the trial, but every time I try to get out this office to do things, I'm obligated to do other things. So I made it my business to get downtown today, February the 6th here, and get downtown to Baltimore to the United States Courthouse where the trial was ongoing. So for those of you who have never been and sat in a criminal federal trial, basically they have 16 jurors, 4 alternates, and the jury pool, well, not jury pool, but the actual jury box is 12 jurors. So in effect, if a couple jurors are sick or whatever and can't make it, you have at least 4 alternates that you can use. And so I'm just giving you basically how the courtroom was set up. Certainly you had a judge there. You had the two defense tables and 1 prosecution's table. Officer Hersl had 3 attorneys, and Officer Taylor had 2 attorneys at their table. Then there's a gallery. The gallery probably sits about 100 people, so if not more. So actually, in the gallery was, I would say, about 75% filled today with news reporters, local law schools, FBI agents, internal investigation individuals from Baltimore City Police Department, and just a few other people involved in the criminal justice system. And then you have families and friends as well. So basically the case opened up. I got there around 9:30. The case kind of already started when I got there. But the case basically opened up with the state presenting, basically at this point in the trial, they were looking at the racketeering and corruption charges that dealt specifically today with the overtime fraud. And so the state put on their witness, which was a female FBI agent. Let me see, her name was okay. This has been Special Agent Jensen from the local FBI office here in Baltimore, who seems like she was the lead investigator on the case. So just to give you an idea, most of you have already viewed the TV reports where I was on TV last night, local here, WBFF Channel 45. Those of you around the country can just Google WBFF Channel 45 in Baltimore. And today I was interviewed again just outside of the courthouse after the first recess through Channel 13, which is WJZ here in Baltimore. You can Google WJZ and you can kind of find the interview. Just gotta search for it. I'll try to leave the links. I think I left the link for the Channel 45 interview for some of you who have we converse probably more than the rest of the subscribers online here. So I've just made an extra effort to make sure that you guys had the link. But I'll certainly will leave the link down in the description box underneath this video this evening. So basically, I will tell you, out of all the testimony that I heard today, because basically the defense had put maybe 3 witnesses on today. And those witnesses had to do with a particular location that Detective Hersl was involved in, where he had actually wrote the search and seizure warrant for this gentleman's house. And once the warrant was executed with about maybe 12 officers, there was money taken. And in this particular case, we're talking about originally somewhere between about $8,500 was first reported, I believe. And subsequently, the only amount turned in was $4,000. Now, what it appears to be is that Detective Hersl was the person who recovered the money, but other officers actually submitted the money. I think I told you this before. When warrants take place, generally officers are assigned certain duties. So you may have officers who are going to write reports. You'll have officers turning in narcotics and money and anything else. So everybody's assigned a different detail at these particular raids when police go on them. And that's throughout the country. It's kind of the same deal throughout the whole United States. So the defense put on a couple of the officers who actually went on the raid, and these are officers certainly who weren't indicted in the case, but these were witnesses for actually Detective Hersl, is kind of how they presented this case on the defense side. And basically, both officers testified that they went to the house based on the raid, and whatever job they performed, they performed. One officer who turned in the money said he turned in $4,903. That's quite shy of the $8,000 that was reported missing by the gentleman who was locked up at that location. You had the state, which I thought put on a better case today. The state, particularly, this officer here was fantastic in his testimony in terms of Sergeant, the sergeant in charge of Jenkins, in charge of the whole gun task force unit. This young man, let me get his name. His name is James Katopoulos. James Katopoulos, right? And basically, Mr. Katopoulos, young fellow, I think he's 26 years old. He basically said that he came on the department in 2011, I believe. Let's make sure. Yeah, 2011, he came on the department. He stayed for a couple of years up into the Baltimore riots, and then he felt like he needed to move on to another police department up in Jersey. So he's originally from Jersey, but he happened to apply for this job back in 2011. He got it and decided to stay for a couple of years, and then he applied for another department in Jersey. Well, he got to that department in Jersey and kind of like didn't like it. So he reapplied to come back to Baltimore, and this probably would have been in like 2016, somewhere around there. And just to give you a little history on this young man, he was originally signed, when his first stint here in Baltimore, he was originally signed to Northeast District, where at that time Sergeant Jenkins was working and was a supervisor before Sergeant Jenkins was actually assigned to the gun task force. So at that time, he knew of Sergeant Jenkins, and he didn't know anything about his uncharacteristic behavior or any type of criminality at that time. So when he comes back to Baltimore to reapply to work as an officer, he requests to work with gun task force Sergeant Jenkins. So Jenkins makes that happen. The kid comes from Northeast District, comes to work in criminal investigations, gun trace task force. Now, this is like the most compelling statement in the whole trial. And this was kind of, to me, in my estimation, was a bombshell. He testified that while Sergeant Jenkins was on leave for about 90 days, he was on paternity leave with for his wife having a baby, him and his wife, you know, having a kid, that when he came back off of leave, him, Sergeant Jenkins, and this Detective Hersl, who's on trial now, got together and asked James Katopoulos to take a ride with them. And the request they made was also, leave your phone, don't bring your telephone, and any other equipment you have, don't bring it, because we're going to talk, you know, it's a discussion we're going to have. So they leave headquarters in Baltimore and drive approximately 2 to 3 blocks away from headquarters, and the conversation goes like this. Jenkins gets out the car, Hersl gets out the car, and the kid gets out the car, the young officer gets out the car, and the officer says, and the Sergeant Jenkins says this, he says, look, what we do in this unit is we follow drug guys who have a lot of money, and we take their money after we find where they live at and how much money we think they're bringing in. To that effect is his testimony, this young guy from Baltimore City Police Department. At that time, he responded, hey, look, I don't want to get involved in this. This don't make no effing sense, right? Because we all wear badges, and I don't want to be a part of it. So Jenkins tells him, okay, fine, you don't have to be a part of it. Shortly thereafter, within probably a week's time of this conversation, Jenkins puts in a transfer for this kid to go back to another unit, or excuse me, back to his district, and it's approved. Now, what you don't know about Jenkins is this: there are middle management people who love this guy because this guy can do no wrong in their eyesight. When I say middle management, I'm talking about lieutenants, captains, and majors at the Baltimore City Police Department. So basically, Jenkins has a free reign of this whole unit, and therefore he becomes unaccountable to those lieutenants, captains, and majors. And this is why this whole corruption case can move the way that it did, virtually undetected by a lot of other people within the department and without the department. So this is how he can just say, okay, well, I want this guy transferred out, and it's automatically approved, because even though a sergeant makes the he can make the suggestion or the request that an individual be transferred. It still has to be approved from the higher ups. Okay, and so it was definitely approved, and this young officer was sent packing out this unit because he didn't want to be a part of what was going on. And so that was fantastic testimony. You could see the officer on the stand, and he told the truth. Now, defense counsel tried to ruffle his feathers a little bit, wanting to know, well, why didn't you complain about what Sergeant Jenkins had asked you to do to Internal Affairs right away? He said because he didn't think whether or not it was a test or whether it was a situation that he had to go right then and there to report. And I will tell you, having been on the department, you see a lot of things that you know aren't the way they're supposed to be, and you see a lot of things that could possibly have an officer under investigation. But your thinking is that, well, if he keeps doing the dirt that he's doing, eventually somebody else will catch up with him, and you know, he'll be indicted. And you don't want to be that officer that's actually making that report. And I could sense that that's how this young man was feeling when he was being cross-examined by defense counsel today over the federal courthouse. Still, his testimony was so genuine that I could look in the jury's eyes today, and I can see the jury that they really went and felt for this young man being put in this type of position, particularly since he had left the department and decided to come back to the department. So I just wanted to bring that out of all testimonies today. That was the most compelling testimony in this whole case. Okay, so it left a lot of doors open in terms of supervision and of this particular gun squad unit, or let's just say lack thereof supervision of this gun squad unit. Let's see. There came a point probably around afternoon after 12 o'clock where, now this is actually the last day of the trial. So defense counsel had put on their case, the state had put on their case, the state had rested in their case. Defense counsel made a motion for basically a judgment of acquittal on these particular RICO charges, RICO meaning corruption and racketeering under USC Title 18. And the judge said, no, I think we have a lot here to go to the jury. So the motion was denied. Now, if you remember in one of my videos, I said to you guys that based upon the original 6 officers who had already pled guilty several months ago, that these guys were rolling the dice. And I will tell you, after what I heard today and kind of putting the whole case together, I think they made a big mistake by not taking the plea bargain that was probably offered to them 3 or 4 months ago. Because they're looking at doing a lot of time if found guilty. And I will tell you, as I said in my video where I outlined why they would be found guilty, well, today I could actually see why they will be found guilty. And once the judge denied the motion for defense counsel to have the whole case thrown out, I could tell right then and there that this case was going to go south for these 2 defendants, both Hersl and Taylor, and therefore they'll be going to jail, I'm almost sure, as soon as the jury comes back with a guilty verdict, because there's no way in the world, having heard what I heard today, that the jury would not come back with a guilty verdict. Now, having said that, tomorrow, which is the 7th, which is on a Thursday, excuse me, Wednesday, that is a day where the jury instructions will be read to the jury, outlining the case in terms of what the crime is, what the elements are, and can the jury match the elements to what was presented from the prosecution side as well as from the defense side. Okay, did the state prove their case? Did they prove every element? I always talk about elements in the case because to be convicted in the United States of America, the state must prove every element of a charge. If they miss one element and a jury feels that they missed one element, that defendant can be found not guilty. And so nothing changes, even though we're at the federal level, it's still the same process. So I just want to make that clear. So once the jury gets the jury instructions tomorrow, then they'll go over those jury instructions with the jury in this particular case, and then go ahead and turn the whole case over to the jury for deliberations. Those deliberations will probably start tomorrow afternoon. I'm looking for the jury to come back with their decision probably around late Thursday or Friday of this week. So, you know, I'm going to hold off on putting out another video between now and then until we actually get a verdict. There's some other things where I want to move on to another section of this particular case that deal with Detective Gondo and some of his behavior and some of the things that he has accused of doing prior to.